Once upon a time, in a small town in Lagos, the hot sun was shining strongly, banging like a drum on the metal roof of Jane's apartment. Inside, she was singing a love song happily while she was cooking delicious jollof rice. She was excited because John, her boyfriend for 2 years, was about to arrive. Their time together had been full of fun nights and secret kisses under palm trees. The doorbell rang. Jane hurried to answer it. There stood John, holding a bunch of lilies with a shy smile. He looked amazing in his traditional white outfit against his dark skin. Jane felt overjoyed seeing him. "Hello, beautiful," John said, gently moving a strand of hair from Jane's face. "Hi, handsome," Jane replied warmly. "Come on in. The jollof rice is almost ready." They sat down on the old sofa, and John handed Jane the bucket of lilies with a flourish. While they chatted, John's expression showed a hint of concern. Jane knew why. Because of his mother, Uche. Uche Okoi, a strong-willed woman known from her sharp tongue, had made it clear she didn't approve of Jane. Uche found fault in everything about Jane. Her job as a graphic designer was too modern, and her laughter was too loud, and her dreams of traveling the world was too frivolous. Jane, who grew up hearing stories of independent women, couldn't understand Uche's disapproval. John cleared his throat, disrupting Jane's train of thought. "Mom wants us to visit this weekend." Jane felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. "Oh, yeah," John mumbled, avoiding her gaze. "She wants to talk about things." That talk was code for another round of Uche's disapproval disguised as concern. Jane steeled herself. John loved her, and they would face Uche together. On the next Saturday, Jane felt nervous as they arrived at John's home, a big house in a quiet area of Lagos. When they entered, John's mom, Uche, greeted them with a false smile and a pat on Jim's arms that didn't feel friendly. It felt tense as they sat in the fancy living room with all family pictures watching over them. Uche didn't waste time. "John," she said, her voice sounding sweet but angry. "Have you thought about what I told you? You need a wife who is a doctor and who values family." John got defensive. "Mom, Jane is perfect for me. She's kind, smart, and supports me." Uche laughed sarcastically. "Supportive? Is she okay with staying home and raising kids? Does she understand what a wife would do?" Jane, usually ready with a response, couldn't find the words. Uche's words, full of tradition and expectation, made her heavy and unsure. The night turned into a tense situation. Uche made subtle insults about Jane's job, suggesting that a true woman should stay at home. John, torn between her love for Jane and duty to his mother, tried to defend Jane, but Uche's comment left him feeling frustrated and defeated. Later that night, as they were in John's childroom's room, it was very quiet. Jane nervously picked at the peeling paint on the window ledge, tears welling up in her eyes. "Maybe your mom is right," she said softly, her voice trembling. John turned to her looking worried. "No, Jane, she's not. She doesn't know I like you and I love you. She doesn't even know how amazing you are." "But what if she's right? What if I am not good enough for you?" Jane's voice grew louder, revealing her self-doubt. John gently held her face in his hands, his eyes full of love. "You're everything I've ever wanted, Jane. You're strong, independent, and caring. You make me laugh, you challenge me, and you make me a better person." In the following weeks that followed, they started to drift apart. John was so focused on making his mom happy that they became distant, while Jane, dealing with her own doubt, found it hard to talk. Their weekends, which were once fun, turned into times of uncomfortable quietness and tense talks. One evening, as Jane looked at travel blogs on her computer, she got a message. It was a job offer in Dubai. It was from a great design company, and it was a chance for her to explore a new place. She had been secretly hoping for this opportunity for a long time, but now she felt the weight of John and Uche's disapproval. Could she follow her dreams and still keep her relationship? The decision was hard. When John came in, he didn't seem as cheerful as usual. He sat next to her, reaching for her hand uncertainly. Jane held his hand, finding comfort in the warmth. I got a job offer, Jane said suddenly, her voice low. John looked surprised. A job offer? For what? In Dubai, at a design company that I've been longing to work for. John stayed quiet, thinking Jane waited nervously. Wow, he said eventually. That's great, Jane. I'm so happy for you. She felt relieved, but then she felt worried again. But, she asked, her voice shaking. But, John sighed, running his hand through his hair. Isn't Dubai really far away? Jane understood what he was suggesting. Dubai offered them a chance to get away from Uche's disapproval and start a new life, but it also meant being far from each other, which would make their relationship harder. Tears filled Jane's eyes. This is a big opportunity, John. I can't just ignore it. It is going to change our future. He looked closely at her. But what about us, Jane? What about our future? That question made everything seem uncertain. Jane knew she wouldn't make him choose between her and his mom. Uche was a big part of his life, and he felt loyal to her because of tradition and love. The following weekend, they decided to go and see Uche together. John, feeling sure about his decision, told her about Jane's offer and their plan to build their life together. Uche was angry, but this time John stood up with Jane. He talked about his love for Jane and his belief in her dreams. He said they would build their future together, even if it meant doing it in their own way. Uche felt frustrated when she saw how determined her son was. The weekend ended without a promise to make things right, but Jane and John understood each other better. Later on, Jane decided to relocate to Dubai, and John moved to a small apartment. They were far from Uche both physically and emotionally. John even got a job, and they supported each other. Life was tough, but they used to have late video night calls to feel close to each other. But Jane loved living in Dubai. Her job went well and she enjoyed the city's diverse culture. As time went by, they got used to being apart. They got better at talking to each other and appreciated the time they spent together on weekends. One day, Jane got a call from John. She told her Uche was sick. Then Jane decided to come back to Nigeria. Jane decided to go and see Uche in the hospital when she immediately arrived in Nigeria. She looked sorry and weak as she apologized in a hoarse voice. I'm sorry I misjudged you, Jane, Uche said. I let old ways of thinking stop me from seeing who you really are. You've made John happy, and that's all I ever wanted. Uche's eyes filled with tears showed a different side of her compared to the tough woman Jane knew. Jane felt sorry for Uche, who had once been so critical of her. She gently held Uche's hand. It's all right, Jane whispered, surprisingly not feeling bitter. We can start all over from here. Uche's sickness led to a fragile peace. As John took care of his mom, Jane saw a new side of him. He was patient, kind, strong, and these qualities Jane admired them a lot. But the peace with Uche didn't last long. During one visit, John found an old document hidden in a drawer. It was an adoption paper revealing a shocking truth. John wasn't Uche's real son. This news shook them. Uche felt guilty and admitted she had adopted John when she couldn't have children of her own. John was heartbroken. He could not believe that the person he thought was his mother had kept a big secret from him. The days that followed were confusing and of anger. John questioned who he really was. Jane stayed by his side, giving him comfort during this tough time. As time passed by, John started to feel better. He contacted the adoption agency to find his real parents. The search led him to a small village in eastern Nigeria, where he met a kind couple who turned out to be his parents. Their reunion was emotional. They were all happy to see each other, but there was also sadness and a strong need for John to understand his past. Even though they spoke different languages, they felt a strong connection because they were family. John also found out that he had a younger sister who looked even like him. When Uche heard about John's new family, she was hesitant at first, but eventually she wanted to meet them too. Jane felt both scared and excited about having a bigger and more complicated family. Uche thought she was weak and decided to go on the journey with John, and they started to have some peace between them. The people in the village were happy and they welcomed Uche. John's real parents treated Uche kindly and respectfully. Although they had taken away their son, they couldn't blame her. They all shared story and laughter together, and it felt that they were becoming a real family. Back in Lagos, Jane noticed that John had changed. He seemed more confident and happier. They looked ahead to the future and not just as a couple but as a family, built on love, acceptance, and the strength to overcome challenges. Their love story was different from what people expected. It showed how strong love, forgiveness, and making a family in an unexpected way could be. Jane returned to Dubai and 2 years passed quickly. One evening, everything changed for Jane. John called her in panic from Lagos. Uche had gotten sicker and the doctor didn't think she would get better. Jane immediately booked a flight to Lagos, feeling anxious. John was waiting for her at the airport, looking worried. As they hurried to the hospital, Jane felt a mix of emotion, sadness for Uche and fear for John, and something else that she couldn't understand. Uche looked weak in the hospital. John held her hand and comforted her. Jane came closer, holding a bunch of lily, the same flowers John had given her when they first visited her. Uche opened her eyes slightly and whispered, "Jane," barely unable to speak. Jane sat next to Uche, giving her a kind smile. "I'm here, Uche." Uche held John's hands tightly. "Look after her, John. She's like a daughter to me." John nodded, tears forming on his eyes. Uche's words were both sad and happy for Jane, making her feel emotional. The days after that were blur. They spent a lot of time at the hospital, talking quietly and saying goodbye. Uche passed away peacefully, surrounded by the love of her family, which was different from what she expected. After the funeral, there was a heavy feeling of sadness between Jane and John. John, trying to be strong, started going through Uche's thing. That's when he found a hidden part of her jewelry box and an old diary. As John read the diary, he looked worried and called Jane over. "You need to see this, Jane," he said urgently. The diary was surprising. Uche wrote about how she couldn't have children and met a woman who was pregnant and needed help. The dates matched up, making Jane feel scared. She looked at the diary, feeling a cold fear. Could it be true? Could John actually be? John looked at her, realizing the same thing. "There's a chance you might be mine," he couldn't finish. The shock of the revelation made everything feel heavy. Jane felt a mix of emotion, shock, doubt, and a strange feeling of confidence. The people who felt like family, the person who she loved, could they really be? John took her hand, looking unsure. Jane, we need to find out the truth.